Good morning, all, or happy lunchtime for my friends in Southdowns and others of you living in the future. And welcome to Kalbardrs Korner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I am Baron Kalbardr Geiler, painting the Meridian Cross, painting the Argent Comet, painting the Pilgrim Star, painting the Palmer's Lantern, Defender of the West, and Reaper. Coming to you live from the southwest outpost of the Barony of Southdowns here on the beautiful southern coast of Meridies. Now, today we have a second-time guest here on the channel, the host and founder of the Skraeling Saga. Please welcome Moon Hides the Sun. Good morning, my friend.
Howdy, howdy.
Hey, buddy.
So I kind of wondered, do you have to read that off a script, or do you?
I do actually. I do. If not, I will screw it up every time. I have a Google Doc on the other screen that has all my introduction to different shows on it. It even shows I've done one time. I keep in there just in case I have to do it again, and I have to adjust occasionally. I went back and did an old show, I was hosting Ask Nights Live again or something, and it still had my old Lord title in there. I was like, I gotta update some things. Hold on. So yeah, I had a agreement with myself when I was writing that. I was like, okay, when I get awards, here's my line. So I only add certain awards to it. I have a level thing. There was a whole discussion with myself, but I do those a lot. Anyways, hi Moon, how are you doing, buddy?
Good.
So, Moon, if you will, if you introduce yourself to the audience, tell us who you are, where you're from, and why you are, in fact, awesome.
Well, I'm Moon, or Moon Hides the Sun. I would say it in Salagi, but I butcher it myself.
Fair.
And I'm from Callantyre. Originally from a little shire called Spinning Winds, which is Manhattan, Kansas, which is this close to the geographic center of the continent. So everything is far away for me, when it came to events. Why I'm awesome? Well, I'm Moon. That's kind of like being Tigger, so there's only one.
Do you, in fact, bounce, though?
I can. If people worry.
Fair. They're like, oh, God, what happened to the Moon? He's bouncing again.
Well, there is a saying that a bored Callantyre is a dangerous Callantyre.
Okay, I've never heard that.
So Penzic, we may be the reason that the golf carts are low-jacked now, because they disappear and wake up in tents, things like that.
Okay, so Callantyre steals golf carts. Got it. Moving on. Okay. Before we get ourselves in trouble further.
It was the Ootlands.
Fucking Ootlands, man. You can't trust those guys for nothing. Oh man, that's one of my funnier things that I do at a war. I will just scream Ootlands and run away. But I've been given official permission to do that. So oh, and Bela just loves it when I do that shit too. He hates me. Okay, anyways, let's get on to the show before we dive into that bailiwick. So today's show is, of course, coffee themed, so we must discuss the beans. And we have a question already in our chat, too. We'll go to that in a second. So today's coffee for me is dark. It's super dark. It's called Dark and Intense from Community Coffee. I picked it up the other day, and it's dark and intense. I was actually expecting it to be a lot more bitter, because usually dark coffees are bitter, and I'm not a big fan of them. But I tried this one because it looks, the package is very intense and had flames and shit on it. It looked really cool. I'm a sucker for good marketing. I really am. There's no joke. The people who do the aisle, the candy aisle next to the registers, that's for me. Mm-hmm. It's impulse buys are my jam. But no, it's good. I'm happy for it. But also, of course, out of my Feed the Ravens mug for my Westie besties. So I got to promote Feed the Ravens because I know Moon has another potter he likes to promote. So Feed the Ravens, look them up. Check them out at Penzic. What about you, Moon? What you got?
I got some Shea Atwood House Blend, otherwise known as Doctored Up Folgers.
Nice. So, what about your fancy
we're
mug?
Like coffee basic,
right?
Okay, so I'm dual mugging here this morning. Actually, quad mug. I got my Please Touch Pottery from ours, which is. I'm lucky he lives 20 minutes from me, so I can literally.
You can just drive down to his house. I need some pottery, please. Yeah.
But then for my backup water, I got some Painted Sky pottery from Her Majesty Marie.
Nice.
So, I mean, if we're throwing down, I got my Ashen Griffin feared mug back there, and then
I see the Ashton Griffin back there. Yeah,
got the mug of mystery back there, which came from Gulf Wars, but I'm not sure who made it. So,
we should put up a picture of like name this mug. See if we can identify the potter.
There's a maker's mark on it. I just don't remember the name of the stall.
Oh yeah, I guarantee you, if you put that up on Facebook, we can find that potter within like minutes. Like
Nice.
the community out here is ridiculous, and I did that. I had a potter on a show that I was visiting a friend up in the mid realm, and she's like, "Oh, here, you can use this cool mug I've got. I picked it up at a war some time ago." And I sent a picture to a potter friend of mine of the Maker's Mark. I was like, "Hey, who made this?" She's like, "Oh, that's one of mine." And I was like, "Oh, how about that?" So it ended up being a Meridian potter that this girl in the mid realm had. I was like, "Well, that worked out."
And of course, they come mowing by our building like right now.
It never fails. The cat will be on the keyboard. She will ignore me all day until the show starts, and the cat's on the keyboard every time, or they mow the grass. So. But anyway, it's okay. It's okay. We can cycle on through their mowing. So today's show, I want to first of all, for those of you out there watching, please introduce yourself out in the comments. Let us know who you are, where you're from, and if you have any questions during the show, please drop them in there. This show is very much unscripted, and we're here for you guys. We're here to talk about what you want to talk about. And answer your questions. So please drop them out there. I'll include your name, title, so we can address you properly. If there's anything we see that we don't want to cover or can't cover for various reasons, we'll let you know why and sort of talk about that. But we may use it for a follow-up show if need be. So today's topic is about being Indigenous. So being Indigenous in the SCA and Moon, this is very much your passion. This is who you are as a person, and I want to talk about a little bit about what you've done with your persona, what you've done with your personal background, sort of how you incorporate the two, some pitfalls you've hit, that sort of thing. We do have a question from our audience we'll hit in a minute. But I do want to start with first with this one is what nation is the word you said, and I won't butcher it, the language of your name. What is it?
It's Tsalagi. It's Tsalagi. It's Tsalagi. Okay. It's actually the personal term for Cherokee. It's what they call themselves. So it's the name of our language. It's what we are. Yeah. So so for me, so I started in the SCA when I was 16. I am not a second gen though. So I've actually been at this for like 32 years with a little bit of break for kids and stuff like that. As far as I know, I am actually the very first North American persona in the SCA. Okay. I'm sure someone's going to tell me I'm wrong.
Right.
I will say Surish doesn't count. Partly because
we can say that for multiple reasons, though.
Well, but he's not necessarily a North American persona.
Right.
He does Mayan Aztec stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, Ish is a great guy. I've met him a couple times. We're friends on Facebook. You know, he does a lot for the society and the sport and things like that. His thing is just different than mine.
Yeah.
So for me, so I was going by the city park, and there were a bunch of guys in armor going, swinging sticks at each other. And I was like 15. And I'm like, I want to do that. And I roll up and they go, you got to be 16. And I'm like, my birthday is in like 2 months. I'll be back.
Right? I will see you then.
I didn't know I could still stay. They were having problems with teenagers at the time. So I was just like, cool, I'll be back. I thought there's just an age limit. So I come back. I'm like, cool, I want to do that. And they're like, well, you need your parents' permission. Cool, I'll be right back. What do they need? Well, they got to sign this paper. Cool. So I ran home. I drove home. Had my dad signed it. Sure, no problem. Here you go. And they're like, but your parents really should be. I'm like, they have a life. They do stuff. They're right. So a lot of running around with that, and they're like, well, you need a persona and stuff like that. I was like, cool, I will be me. They're like, what do you mean be you? It's like, I'll be Cherokee. Like, but it's Europe. And this is like 91.
Let's just say then it was just European, yeah.
I'm like, cool. What about all the cool new stuff for, like, Norse discovered America? It's in period, right? I was rules lawyering, malicious compliance, and they're just like, sure. I think it was just to shut the kid up.
Yeah.
So I actually had a lot of my longtime friends, from there, all had Norse personas, and they basically agreed, cool, we threw him in the boat. So, and that's kind of where it started, is Moon got picked up, thrown in the boat, and hauled back.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of like went vacationing down through, Scandinavian stuff. And I was actually thinking about it for a while. We've got, all this stuff going around. I'm like, how can I do this? Right. There's Time was coming out with, Lansdowne Meadows, all these different things. I'm like, that's it right there. And so I am part Cherokee, part Scandinavian, so it's me looking at my, heritage, really. That's how I combine the two, those ways. Like, okay, cool. These guys are all Vikings. My family are literally Vikings turned farmers on the other side.
I mean, the phrase Viking is just, traveling conquest war. I mean, it's literally what it translates to. Like,
so I've learned since then that, like, they referred to the old, Prussia was the old country. Mm-hmm. There were those kind of Germans, like everybody went, no, we don't talk about those guys. And like, I looked at some other stuff and they're like, no, we really don't talk about those guys because they came in and took everything, just watching. So I'm like, cool, that fits. And my name actually is my name. It's the one that was. So I was actually reading a book. I actually had to deal. It was a fictional book set in the Pacific Northwest during the British colonial period, mm-hmm. when they were tooling up, the West Coast into, like, Washington, Oregon area. And bizarrely enough, the villain was named Moon Hides the Sun. So I was like, that's cool. That's my name. And we were going through, and like my sister had her official naming, my niece and everything. And I asked my dad why he never named me. He's like, well, you already chose your name. It fit better than anything I could pick.
Right.
Okay. So I just kind of went from there. And for the longest time, it was, people were like, what is Moon? I'm like, Moon's Cherokee. What is he doing with a bunch of Vikings? Well, he went too far north, and got thrown in a boat. And for a long time, all I had was Lansdowne Meadows. That's all I had.
Right.
There was nothing else. And then not too long ago, we had like Iceland's, genetic research project, where everybody on that island, if they didn't move in, is related to 50 different indigenous women that were brought back. So it's possible. When I was growing up, my dad was like, bridges work both ways.
Right.
So, yes, I am a big what if, but it's what lets me go through and study what makes me me. So.
Let's talk about that what if a little bit. I think that's an interesting. The SCA being the creative anachronism, right? So we things are out of time and things that are creative. A lot of what we do is what ifs. Mm-hmm. Like I've had the duct tape is period argument with people more times than I care to think about. Is duct tape is period. The Vikings had it, and they did it. So like, what is your? I guess like the goal for your persona. What are you doing as far as like the research is concerned? How are you incorporating that? Like, what do you do day to day with your persona work? With that what if-ism?
I'm kind of taking it as a similar approach that for the guys that do indigenous, like colonial period,
Mhm.
Recreation. And theirs isn't. Some of them they are reenactors because they're doing specific time periods. Like the guys at Jamestown, they're top notch guys. They do their stuff. So I'm kind of doing it in a similar fashion, but I'm just like almost 1,000 years earlier.
Right.
Actually, it's like somewhere around 910, 912, somewhere like that. Because there is actually a point in time that you could walk from South Carolina to Constantinople.
Constantinople, yep. I like that map the other day. I found that. I was like, that's an interesting map. All right.
Yeah. So basically, I'm doing it in small embellishments because, here's this guy that's traveled up the East Coast, gone across, the ice, Micmacs, followed like the walrus trade for ivory, things like that, come down through Northern Europe, still kind of traveling. Like, what? Eventually, he's going to run out of his own clothes. What's he going to do? He's going to wear what's local, but he's going to embellish it the way he would embellish it. So a lot of my clothing is, Norse time period clothing, for migration period and all that, which is funny that they call it the migration period.
Those roads cross, folks. Yeah.
But there's so many things that are similar that you can embellish different ways,
right,
and, put your own little thing on that people are like, like you see those guys, like Jamestown, other Econo-Lufty and, Carolina and stuff like, Georgia, things like that. That you're like, oh, they're wearing colonial stuff. And then you realize that is not a colonial guy.
Well, there's only so many ways to make a shirt, frankly.
Right.
I mean, it's like you take out, like, as a painter, you take a canvas. That same canvas in the hands of 30 different painters is going to give you 30 different paintings. But it's the same canvas to start with,
So braise and leggings is not really any different than leggings and breechclout.
Right.
Kind of the a T-tunic is a tunic, it's a shirt.
Yeah.
Geometric construction is geometric construction. They didn't corner the market on math.
Right. that was the Arabs. The Arabs did that for us. Thank you.
Right. So just, little things like that to make it, I can share both sides of what I am. Mm-hmm. And if anybody ever actually sits down and asks me, I'm more than happy to, burn their ears off with, stuff.
Which I think is the important part is, I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on this, is as someone who is different, like I'm going to put you in the box of different for a second, the non-European personas. Do you feel like you have to try harder to know what you're doing versus if you were just doing Norse? Like if you're just doing Norse, you're like, I'm Norse, somebody's never going to ask me about that. But because you're doing First Nations, Cherokee things, do you have to try harder?
Oh yeah, you have to try lots harder, and you have to not only rationalize but justify more to like people who don't even know what you're talking about. They're like, well, why would you have that? Because that's what we had.
Right.
It's like everybody's like, oh, well, where's your stone knife or whatever? Like, man, we had copper and silver and, soft metal stuff. We just used those things because they were convenient.
Right.
Trade routes were huge. There were signposts. You can look at, colony era exploration notes where they're literally seeing markings on trees. It was basically, this far to Little Tree, this far to New York, right. Go this way. These people live here, leave them alone.
If you want to get cut, go that way.
Yeah. And you very much have to justify what you're doing more, and your stuff has to be more on point, and the rules for all your information is stricter. Because like they just did open it up to oral tradition. You know, that's hard.
I was going to say, yeah, I saw that, was like, that's great, but also I can see the frustration here, because how do you deal with that? So like, what was your initial, like, talk about that, because I'm interested to hear someone who's, that's the culture. How you
So like
with
doing documentation, they're like, oh well, it wasn't written down. I'm like, in what? English?
Right.
You know, and for a while that was like, yeah. It wasn't written by some old white dude. It didn't exist. But now they're like, okay, maybe we need to accept oral tradition with different stuff. So I'm like looking at it, and I went to, you know, for our anniversary, we went to Tahlequah, which is like the seat of the Cherokee Nation as far as Oklahoma is concerned. And we have people who are considered national treasures. You know, there are historical voices. So I sat down with one of the main ones, and he's like, you know, we're just there for the going through the tour. And he goes, well, you know, if you stick around, I'll talk your ear off. I was like, no, I want my ear talked off.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
I want to know it all. And he kind of looked at me and was like, this is what I do. And he's like, oh, cool. What are your questions? And we just sat down. So now, quite literally, it's I can cite this national treasure, you know, relaying this information to this, but I still almost have to write her out like a doctoral thesis.
Right.
Because I have to, you know, put the points and what they said and when they said it and things like it's really kind of a pain because, like you said before, Norse stuff, you can go pick up a book and just I looked in this book, did this thing.
I have this boat and this stuff here. It's not hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's but you also have the benefit of having that culture today, right? And that's so I say benefit. Obviously, you're still with her, but like you at least can go talk to people, right? Other cultures don't have that benefit or have that resource available.
So, I mean that is yes and no.
Right.
So when Kyle Chulik and his girlfriend were on, you know, doing their bit because they're Cree, they have rules of who they can go talk to and how they can go talk to them. And what, you know, what the old people say is what the old people say, and that's just how it is. You know, for me, not living on a reservation, like it's like add a level of difficulty.
Because even though you are portraying that and had that as your heritage, you're still the outsider.
Right. And I can't just call. Because you have to go talk to them in person. I mean, that's the other thing is like people go, oh yeah, it's his great grandma was a Cherokee princess or whatever. Like, no, it was my grandmother.
Yeah.
She was no princess. She was an archaeologist that ran around, you know, Texas and Mexico and New Mexico, cave hunting for artifacts. This is where it gets a little rough. Not long ago, I got told I didn't look Indian enough.
Right.
And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, your eyes are too blue. Your hair's not dark enough. I'm like, well, no, I'm not 100%, but my hair is getting a little gray. Has been since I was 16. I'm sorry, my eyes are blue. All of their eyes were blue. Which everybody's like, no, then you must have had some white guy in your family. I'm like, genetics, man. There's a diagram, you know.
There's Punnett squares. There's the whole thing. We were talking a little bit before the show about you being blonde when you were a kid and throwing off your family a little bit too.
So my dad is the one that's half and half. Mm-hmm. You know, he was blonde. He was like a white blonde kid that was dark as hell. You know, he's got the nose. You know, mine's broken and stuff, but he had the nose. That everything is just he was blonde and blue-eyed. You know, my grandpa was a redheaded Norseman, quite literally. I mean, guy was like 6'4" with red hair, blue eyes. You know, here I am. You know, my dad was squished in between. You know, so yeah, like when I was little, my hair was really light brown, to almost blonde, until it started darkening up. You know, but still just as tan. You know, things like that. But yeah, you run into that stuff of you don't look the part enough. It's like when I go to powwows, I don't know how to feel.
Right.
Because now I'm in that spot where this part of me shows more, but then I don't know, what they think, because they got those looks of you're not enough of one for one, but not too much of another for the other.
Right.
So you're stuck in the middle.
I think it's similar to we see a lot of the American cultures of the mixed children, the black and white child, right? Not being welcome in either of those cultures because they are not either one of those cultures. Essentially, they are a new thing. So I think that's, I can see that being hard. I can see that being a difficult thing to how do you embrace a culture that you are not physically looking like. Like even if you are, like I can show the paperwork of look, this is what I am, but it's not one like I am a very white dude. I am Native American in my heritage. Like I found the paperwork. I've looked at it. Like that is not what I look like. So I will research it. I'll look at it and go, okay, yeah, look, here's where I come from. You ever think I'm going to be comfortable portraying because I am too white for that?
Well, and people would go like, "Oh, where's your card?" Or why don't you live on the reservation? And it's like my dad turned down his citizenship. I watched him do it. You get, people like, "Where's my card?" I'm like, okay, if I want to go get my card now, it just says I'm on paper. And I had a friend who lives in Wichita because he does Norse persona and everything. He's Cherokee too, and all of a sudden he just comes up to me and goes, "How do I have a fucking card and you don't?" And I'm like, I didn't know, right? Because he can grow a real beard, do all this stuff. I'm like, so for a lot of the eastern tribes that we relocated, to Oklahoma, stuff like that, there is the thing called the Dawes rules, where basically you have to prove you were related to this list of people to be included. I am literally 4 names related to like 4 different families on those. But quite literally, they're missing the parent. There's these names. You can say this one's brother, right? But the parent's not there. One is on the Dawes rules, one is not.
Gotcha.
4 different families. My family literally goes all the way back to the base of Cherokee Mountain in Georgia. I can show you, burial sites. Stuff. Right. They're part of the national monument, but I can't be on there because there's no parent there to show. You have to fill out a petition for inclusion and stuff like that, which is like near impossible.
Right.
Whereas before I was literally sitting at K-State, Chief Mankiller was there telling my dad she would get him his citizenship and watching him tell her no. I was 17 at the time. If I knew what I was giving up then, I would have said, I'll do it right now.
Right.
Yeah, but I couldn't sign me up.
What?
But so that's a cultural rule too.
Right. Does that hurt, I guess? So as someone, so you have that background, you can't be a part of that culture because of paperwork reasons and whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it, like pursuing it as in the SCA, pursuing it as a research thing and sort of portraying that, who you are, does it hurt not being part of it officially? And I'll use that word sort of like.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Because there's that feeling of being included, which you are. When you go in to ask questions, you're more likely to be listened to while you're asking. Whereas, some of the older ones, when you Like, I'm literally sitting at my honeymoon, telling this guy how it was told to me, right? Because everything's handed down in stories. Like, this is what we did. I'm being told all these things pre-internet, so it's not like it's some story I grabbed off Google or whatever. This is just how it was told, right? My family would deny what they were for 7 generations. I didn't know how important 7 being, how important, like, hard and fast rule. And I'm telling him these things, and he goes, "Yeah, that's exactly how it is." I'm like, and he's like, "You go inside the library right now." We were in the library. I'm literally finding all these things that are telling me the same stories. And these aren't like, books out. These are written things.
Right.
My spouse is looking at it going, "Holy crap, this is all the stuff you told me." Pre whatever. And so, like, we were talking about Kyle and his girlfriend, Kimiko. I don't want to butcher her name because I'm horrible with language. But they have that kind of similar problem where he is not official, she is.
Mm-hmm.
So his rules are different for her than for her.
Right.
So research wise, that's a whole thing. That's like, oh, cool. That's another white dude coming in to take a thing
To appropriate, yeah.
Right. Or you get the other, bit of like, oh, you're just one of those people with the great, Cherokee princess grandmother. I'm like, this is my grandma.
Yeah. Like I can see as someone in that culture would just see another white dude trying to come in and take something from them. Again, I get that. So you mentioned rules. I'm curious. So in your research, in your persona, are there things that you don't do that culturally you could do that you're allowed to do, or maybe you're not, like sort of what's your line of things you will and won't do? We see the cliche Native Americans with the feathered headdresses and the war bonnets and the fancy this and that. Like what do you do that isn't that?
Yeah, I mean, so like for me, like war bonnets and things, that's a plain stripe thing,
right?
That's just not what I am.
Yeah.
Technically, if I was going to get all culturally attired and stuff, I'm not going to be wearing a whole lot. My head might be shaved,
right,
except for something back here. But there's also like there are some things that are culturally significant that I don't share.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I'm trying to do is I'm alternating it. Like some of the beadwork you might see, or like some of even the tattoo work you might see has like, it was a significant event or it was significant, religious, I don't want to say spiritual or ritual, but like it's a ceremonial symbolism that I don't share. So I try and like switch it with kingdom symbols.
Mm-hmm.
So like I collect swag. Not for the thing, but it's events in Moon's life. Right. So as I share, whereas like normally I might be sharing, something else like a beadwork or whatever that, denoted something. I'm going to have it. It's like, these were the things given to me by Callantyr.
Mm-hmm.
So like my shield that I did, it's got some of my awards, the emblems on it, because it was like I was telling my winter count.
Yeah. Well, these are tattoos you've been given. These are cultures you've been given. These are titles you've been given. I think that's relevant. Yeah.
Right. So I could do like wampum or bead, type beadwork, but some of those things tell, special things that you don't share with the public generally. You keep them, private.
Right.
So instead I'll swap it with, falcons or Calbardrs or kind of similar things. But I might have like 3, gorget things hanging off my thing, or, my mantle might have like 17 little silver cloak pins to it because I collected up some stuff. That's how I got paid. For me, it's buttons. I have a ton of Cross Calatrava buttons as war pay. And it was literal war pay for like Pennsic and Gulf. I'm like, that tells Moon's story.
Right.
Yeah. So that it's a little harder because then a lot of people just, that's just, Callantyr stuff. They don't see that's Callantyr stuff, but that's a little odd.
Right.
So
I think that's taking your persona and incorporating the current culture. And I've talked about this a lot when I talk about people with doing doing alternative titles. And the idea of alternative titles and how do you incorporate your persona? It's like my persona wouldn't have been a baron or a lord or whatever. How do you incorporate that into this? I think that's the same sort of idea. Is like you're incorporating your current kingdom with if you were Moon traveling to the kingdom of Callantyr, living there right now because you are. What would you have done knowing your background, right?
So it's kind of funny. A lot of my awards, with the exception of like 2, I can't read because they're in a different language.
Right.
So like beyond my AOA and my Torse, which are, for us, the Torse is the AOA service. Then I have a basic AOA, right? But then we have Callantyr is currently going through a thing where we are recombining the arts and sciences because before they were separate because we had different tracks. There was, if you drop it on your foot and it doesn't hurt, it's an art. If if it does hurt, it's a science.
Okay.
But
I love that. Okay.
Really historically significant for us as a kingdom, right? Yeah. So we have 2 separate awards. We have the lily and the swan and the lily, and then we have the mallet and the hammer before you get to laurel, right? Now they're combining those back together. So there's a lot of talks of like, what does that become? Things like that. But I had a swan for art, right? But it's in Arabic because the crown that their stuff came through in Arabic. So I can't read it. So for me, it's like Moon being handed a thing. He goes, thank you. But I have the medallion. So there's that symbol.
Well, and you were told what it was, so you have the cultural, you have the sort of the oral tradition of what it is. Yeah.
Right. So, but then, I used to tease, and I'm not allowed to do this anymore, that I was a collector of AOAs.
If you get 3, you can turn it in for GOA, right? That's how it works.
I was trying to get the full set.
Yeah.
And then we're doing this, and that changed. I'm like, man, I got to really up my game because I'm still missing one.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I got my GOA but I'm a hammered swan.
Fair. Okay.
So it's basically I had my swan for art, but then I was given my hammer for science. But I'm like, man, how am I going to get a malleted lily?
Got to balance it back out, yeah.
But they gave me my GOA scroll, which is actually back there, and I can't read it, but it's actually in my language.
Cool.
They took the time to put it in phonetic Selagi, and I can't read it. It's so it's kind of a double whammy on there. It's in Cherokee kind of geometric design. One of my good friends, we share peers, kind of. Our peers are married,
right?
She went through the really hard thing of doing a phonetic translation, and it's all written out. And they like call me up and like read it And I'm just like, I can't read this. So it's kind of the same thing, but like,
Yeah.
here's your thing. And I'm like, oh man. So, but yeah, it's part of that travel for Moon, being acknowledged. My feared, which is our first like fighting award kind of thing, is actually in Japanese. Because my squire brother was king, and he's one of those black samurai, and his stuff was all in thing, and I'm like, man, can't read none of this stuff.
6 scrolls, can't read none of them. Yeah, okay.
So, but yeah, it's kind of like I try and translate that all to being, what it is.
Yeah, effectively a foreigner in your own land in this case, but let's start this. So lands are important, right? So in the SCA we talk about we're in Palantir, we're in Meridies, we're in the mid realm, whatever. But also like you're in Oklahoma. Those are native lands. Those are and other places in Georgia, for instance, here in Meridies, are places that are culturally significant to you. So LOCAC does a interesting thing in a lot of their shows where they acknowledge the lands, they acknowledge the people who came before them, they acknowledge their indigenous cultures.
And what's your time?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I assume it's done in other places. I've dealt with LOCAC doing it. What's your feeling on that? Like, how do you, someone who lives on those lands and visits these lands, like, how do you balance that?
I don't know.
And give me the honest, because this is an honest show here, so I saw the trepidation there.
It can seem performative. I don't know. Not long ago, there was a meme actually about that, and it's like, we acknowledge this, blah blah blah, people blah blah, and then like one of those people that's still here, it's like, give it back, fuckers.
Right?
Just like that. I mean, that's kind of where it is. I mean, you're sitting like me right now. I sit on Potawatomi land. This is where the people were. I'm not one of them. They have a small space. The Wabaunsee, they have a county named after them. I'm between Manhattan and Topeka. There's all sorts of people around me. One of the primary indigenous schools, Haskell, is in Lawrence. Those guys get all. I mean, they're almost like on a little mini reservation.
Right.
It's rough, especially when the people are still here.
Right.
They're like, hey, yes, we appreciate you. We acknowledge you. Look cool. Give it back. Go home. You hear those, go back where you came. You go back where you came from. Can't.
Yeah, you moved me, man. Like, I didn't move me. So, and that's okay. I'll talk as the white guy in the room here. How do we deal with that then? Because like, you're right. Like, we could give it back. We could deal with. We could. How can we better appreciate that? Because we can't give it back. Like, there's like, I was born here. I'm literally where I was born. I'm fucking 30 feet from my original house here. Like, what can we do many generations later to balance that back out? Like, obviously that's a giant political question, I understand. But like, in the SCA, right, as what we can control day to day, which is what I always try to focus on, is there a thing we could do that's better than just acknowledging? Is there a thing we could do that's more appreciative than appropriative?
Okay, so the modern politics bit over here.
It's like, I get, like, yes, we can fix some of this, but like,
well, and I'm not sure we can fix it now.
Yeah,
I mean, this is where we get into like the society portion of the argument, and specifically DEI. This is the inclusivity. We need to rewrite maybe the mission statement of the SCA to be just history of the world pre 1600. not just middle age. Get rid of all the Eurocentric stuff.
Which a lot of it has been in the last couple of years. A lot of it's
Right.
They're peeling it.
Big steps, yet they're still baby steps.
Sure.
This might take a big step and just be like, needs to be the world.
Mm-hmm.
All cultures. If we're exploring all the cultures of the world pre-1600, how huge is that without changing much? And then it's, you're going to get people going, oh, you're harshing my medieval moment. I'm doing my medieval moment.
Right.
This is my medieval moment right here.
Yeah, I've had to be careful. In fact, recently I've been talking to people online, meeting new people, trying to expand my friend circle a little bit locally. And I explain to them what I do, and I describe it as we're Middle Ages, we're medieval recreation. And I realized that, but we're not, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't do medieval, you don't do medieval. None of it, like, we're not doing medieval. We're doing, other cultures, we're doing other time periods. Medieval is a very specific time period, and not a very big one, honestly.
So I've shifted to saying historical recreation.
Yeah.
Which,
pre-1650 historical recreation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that one, everybody goes, oh, okay.
Yeah. It doesn't evoke the same image in your head initially. Like when you say medieval time, you say medieval recreation, you think, you think of Knight's Tale, you think of King Arthur, you think of the movies, which is the exciting parts that people think about. Like that's the Renaissance fair is cool, right? Not that what we do is not exciting, not that what the cultures from before that are not exciting. It's not the movies of it, the movies about the First Nations or the How White Mans of the world. Like that's not what we're doing necessarily. So I can see that being a hard thing to shift, but you're right. I think that's where words have meaning, and that's a word that has meaning that maybe we should let go of.
You said earlier there was a question.
Yes. Okay.
I don't want to overlook that one because
no, you're good. Well, and I was actually kicking around as maybe doing it as the end of the show, but so we had a question come in before the show, and we've touched on this a little bit. With you being someone of mixed ancestry and your culture and your persona being mixed ancestry, so I think this is really relevant. But the question specifically was, as someone of mixed ancestry due to family history, I'm wondering how one arrives at a place of peace about this. So this being the pursuing their culture, pursuing being an indigenous culture. I think it's easy for those of us who are a little more sarcastic, a little more extroverted to do this because we can go, fuck you, I'm doing my thing. Let's have fun with this. But the peace of that, the place of peace, that's the part that really hit me as a question of like, whew. So talk about that.
I was thinking about this while we've been talking, and I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. It is one of the hardest things you can do. Might be one of the most worthwhile things you can do. Mm-hmm. Mainly because you'll get it because you're exploring yourself.
Right.
I mean, then there's going to be points where you're just like, oh, fuck, I don't know if I can do this. That's when you keep going. I mean, it's just like with any hobby or job or thing, like you gotta navigate, how do I do this? How do I can't worry about the people. This is a pure you happiness kind of thing. So like for me, is like I'm looking at things for me. I'm not looking at things for society people. In some ways, I don't care. There have been times though where friends have said things, people have said things where I'm just like, why do I do this to myself?
Right.
Because I've had people, and I had friends came out like out of the woodwork and called them out on it, and being told you don't look enough like what you are, or you don't look quite right. or you're not doing this thing, or whatever. Some of the more bizarrely racist things you don't always hear. There have been things some of my friends have said. I mean, like, man, if you weren't my asshole, you'd be somebody else's asshole right now.
Right.
Because, I mean, I've been offered blankets. And you're just like, wow.
Ouch.
But
for those watching, that's super racist, by the way. Let's not do that.
You have to like, for me, I had to like sit back and I'm like, okay, I'm looking at who's saying this. I see the smile on their face.
Right.
And I know I can say something about Rome and, not being able to, do certain things or whatever. And they'll just take it with a smile and we're going to go and put our armor on and jack some shit up for a while. But other people, you're just like, I mean, I've heard like, what the fuck is moon anyway? I'm just like, me?
Right.
What kind of question is that? Or, also like traveling places. And I go, used to go to the Outlands, a lot more reservations down there, higher population than where I'm at. And I look around, I feel uncomfortable sometimes because you can see the looks from the other direction,
right.
Different things, but that's also, it's like being, my friend, he's half black, half Scottish. His dad is a black man from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't, especially his brother does not look like a black man from Georgia. I know when they travel around, there's those looks, and you're like, hey, that's some racist shit,
right?
And you're just like,
and we are racist as people. You have prejudice, you have bias. It's just a thing. Let's admit that for a second. There's being rude about it, and I think there's a line there, and that's the line. We have to recognize you're racist. Recognize, oh, well, I think this thing initially because I see a thing, but then what do you do about said thing? And I think that's the lines that we can adjust is what we do about it.
Well, and that's like back to the question though, is like part of that making peace with it is you're making peace with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, yes, you can either be like, man, I'm this and this, and you're like, it hurts. Or you can be like, yes, I am this and this, like it or not.
Right.
And that becomes the huge difference. So I would, it's kind of like the Norse people taking away the stuff from the neo-Nazis, saying, mm-hmm. fuck you, this is ours. And is not, the Allfather doesn't hate everybody.
Right.
Kind of things.
It's all is part of Allfather, y'all.
Yeah, you can't, it's not the Allfather. But it's also.
And I think that's the appreciation versus appropriation conversation that happens a lot. In any of the non-European groups out there, whether it's Eastgate or the Scythian tribe, whatever, it's the appreciation idea. So if you're coming at it, I think, and that's how I always try to look at it. And I've talked to friends who've done like their elevation ceremonies, and they're like, "Well, crap, I don't want to do this, especially during COVID times." They're like, "I want to do my elevation, and I want to have it, broadcast, but also I don't want to be the person in the white chick in Asian garb being broadcast on the internet, because then that's all people are going to see. That people who on the internet aren't going to know the hours and hours and hours and hours and days of research that have gone into this. All they see is, somebody in blackface. That's all they see of it. You don't understand the what's going on. I think so. That's a hard thing to balance. I know there's people who do East Asian personas who are whiter, who don't look the part, that will not appear in public in their East Asian garb. Mm-hmm. They'll wear it at events, but they won't like go to a Ren fair or a demo in their garb because they don't want to be that appropriation look.
Or they have their generic Norse.
Yeah, they have extra stuff that they'll wear out in public, So I think that's the balance you have to find as someone pursuing that is, and we ask this of a lot of our folks of color, of various colors, folks of religion, whatever. You have to do that labor, and that sucks.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's so like for me, it's kind of like, yes, I share my persona, but I do it kind of subtly sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they just see my name.
When I first saw you, I was like, these don't connect. And then I talked to you, I was like, oh, okay, I'm seeing the connection, like, because a lot of your stuff is subtle, but it's there.
So kind of like, that's where I've kind of semi self-diverted, is like doing the videos for my YouTube channel and stuff like that. I look back at like where I was as a kid. I'm not a second gen,
right?
So I didn't have parents there. They were already established doing the things. I was doing stuff on my own. Occasionally I had my own parents help, but they were like, that's your weird, geeky hobby. So I was doing stuff on my own. So that's why I kind of look at it as like, how do I give this back? Which, this is part of that making peace with yourself, is like, how do I give back to the people that have helped me? So I look at my videos and I'm like, cool, I'm going to help kids that don't have parents in the SCA. Almost like that. Oh, cool. That dad, how do I, SCA kind of thing. Like, cool, you're a high schooler with no money doing this thing. How do you do this stuff? I'll show you. You're that college student that's like, sees this weird hobby. You really want to do it though, because that's your kind of weird, but you live in a dorm. How do I do this? Here you go. I know what it's like to be that poor kid. Mm-hmm. I can share, and I can sort of share a little bit of myself at the same time.
Well, and I think that's culturally significant too. The idea of you're effectively teaching your own oral traditions.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you're doing it, mouth to ear. You're just doing it via the internet as opposed to thing. Which, by the way, anybody out there, I've linked the Skraeling saga into the chat there, or chat and comments. Check that out. Subscribe to the Moon. It's really interesting stuff, and it's definitely. I always like to see different people's approach to doing documenting their work. Right. I know there's a lot of folks who don't do documentation in the SCA well because they're dyslexic or they don't like writing or like I don't want to do papers anymore because I'm out of college now. You're effectively documenting your work, and that just doing it via video, and it's amazing that we have this technology to do that with now, and it allows you, I think, to celebrate your culture modernly.
Oh yeah, and like being a whole different argument and discussion. Social media is horribly underused. But like, doing stuff like that, I blame my current night. I blame my first night because they were like, yeah, you're fighting, but you need something else too. Because you won't be able to fight forever. This is my, I am not a stick jock project.
Right.
In some ways, like, yeah, I do other things.
Which anybody who's watched shows here on Kalbardrs Korner know that night's so, folks. It's a thing. I'm working on a project for a friend of mine that I cannot talk about yet, but you'll see eventually. And I sent a picture to Duke Sean, my fellow host from What Makes a Night. I was like, "Look, Sean, I'm doing a thing." He's like, "Hey, bro, night's so." And I was like, "There you go."
Yeah,
and it's true. It's part of being nightly is we do things like this. I think that's and in this case, for those out there who are not stick jocks, nightly being pure like.
Yeah.
Story of Aztec's SCA life. You won't be able to fight forever, folks. There you go.
Well, like my current knight, Angus. Hi, Angus. I'm sure he's watching. He's a triple peer.
Right.
And for him, that is the period. It all goes together. You will have an art. You will serve. You'll be of the people, kind of thing. Yep. So for me, it kind of extra fits because you take care of your tribe.
Oh, I like that.
So
damn it, Moon, I like that. All right, we're just at the hour. Let me do a couple of show plugs, and then we'll do some final thoughts with you. This has been amazing, by the way. I've enjoyed talking to you today. I'm not surprised. All right, coming up next on Kalbardrs Korner, So we're hitting July. This is going to be a weird month because Pinzik is at the end of July, and I am going to Pinzik. There will be some live shows at Pinzik. I'm going to say Pinzik 36 times apparently in this little introduction here. So we're doing a Whose Cause Is It Anyways live show. I'm talking to Baroness Sophia about that now. I'm going to try to do a former Fat Guys meetup. I'm going to do a Coffee with Cal with Baroness Sophia the day after her vigil. So that's going to be funny. So I'm going to catch her between her vigil and her elevation, and we're going to do a live show that morning. So she will be sleep deprived from her vigil, and I'll love that. But it's Sophia; she's used to it. So check out that. Those are all coming up. I haven't scheduled any of that yet, and I'll have one show pre-Pinzik, at least for Coffee with Cal. I haven't got it scheduled yet because it's been fuckery here. So check those. Watch the channel for those. Coming up next Sunday, however, Baroness Remote will be back with Road to Retention with Viscount Cullen and Seva, Viscount Seva, to discuss their road. So these two folks from the East Kingdom who are just amazing folks. I've met Cullen. I've met Seva too. I've actually spent some time on the field with Cullen, and really interesting perspective on how they approach the SCA. It's very similar to what Moon just mentioned, the idea of supporting your tribe. I think that's an interesting, a really good way to look at retention, is that tribe support helps pass on our culture and helps build up who we are as people. And I think it's what a lot of us have lost in the last 10 years is we're becoming less tribal focused, less culture focused. So I'm happy to see folks like Cullen and Seva doing that in the SCA. Viscountess Moore and Dude are great examples from West Kingdom. So there's groups around, but it's something we can do more of. So check that out next Sunday at the regular time. And of course, if you want to follow Kalbardrs Korner and KK Productions, support everything we do here and all the other shows we support, look us up on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions, and join our Grand Wall. If you don't want to join the Grand Wall and can't do that, you can check us out one time on Redbubble, search KK Productions, check out some stickers, or do nightly things sheets, because I'm ridiculous.
Oh, that reminds me. Getting Helga to like redo one of the feral ones, because Mr. Atwin wants one that says feral housewife.
I love Helga's stuff is great. So yeah, I need to grab her link. But yeah, check out Helga's art over on, I think she's on TeePublic now. I'll share the link. I'll grab her link.
Hyena Arts.
Hyena Arts on it. Some of her stuff is just amazing. Like my stuff is cut and paste, other than the Locac sticker, and which Viscount Sophia did from out in Locac. That was just hilariously funny. The rest of them are mostly Kalbardrs cut and paste. So apparently, yeah, I'm guessing that's your night here.
Yep. This ring is a Blackmore. He's
Oh man, so that's that. And of course, check out the Skraeling Saga over on Facebook, and I'll have links in the chat, but I'll also share it on the main page as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Kalbardrs Korner and the Skraeling Saga, and help us both out with our all the metrics on YouTube, so we can have more viewers. So Moon, I want to do a final thought with you here. If you had to sum up your path, your sort of as with Indigenous cultures, you being Indigenous yourself and being an Indigenous persona, what's your piece of advice? What's your sum up there?
It is going to be kind of cliche, but you just got to do it. If it's one of those things that is you, just go out and be you. Be authentic you. That's the difference. And you got to own it. Especially if it's for me, it's a slog. Mm-hmm. I'm having to learn a language remotely that is hard to learn. Especially when you don't have anybody you can talk with.
Right.
There's lots of history, but in some ways that history ends at 1491, and going before that is oh my god, stupid hard. But like the people that have this thing about themselves, go celebrate it. Be you. Don't let people drag you down. Don't let the haters hate. Fuck them. That's part of like the Skraeling saga is like, is not made for kids necessarily because of language, because fuck those guys.
Right.
They want to, hate on what you're doing and stuff like that. I got to sit back. I've watched all the hater wars through the SCA, whether you had a Japanese persona or you were a Mongol persona or, your Middle Eastern personas now, or just because you're not the right color, fuck those guys. This is a hobby. This is meant to be fun.
Right.
Go have the fun.
That's the key word, fun, for me. But also, so there, I think my final thought is have fun, right? Be respectful.
Yeah.
And that's how. So again, as the white guy in the room, I have to approach it that I look at the respect of the thing. Can I do this thing respectfully? Can I do this thing authentically?
But you also have to respect yourself,
right? And respectfully, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Is am I enjoying this, and am I being respectful?
Yeah.
That's been my approach, I think, and I've been successful with it so far. Like I am not a Scythian expert, but I enjoy it. It's what I do, and I'm trying to do it in a way that makes sense.
I need to get with you. A friend of mine, Master Iden Thrisis.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the original Scythians.
Yep.
Me and him went to school together, so that's kind of like, yeah. We'll talk.
There are a couple Scythian meetups happening at Penzic, and I'm super excited about that. So nice. I'm excited to hang out with goofy-headed people. So, anyways, folks, I think it's been fun. Moon, you've been amazing. I just want you to understand that you are. When I saw you on first on Road to Retention, I loved the show. I loved watching you. I loved hearing you talk, and you've been just as impressive here today. So I appreciate your time.
Oh, appreciate you letting me help with stuff now. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, man. And more to come from the Skraeling saga. More to come from some joint work here. But for now, folks, that is an empty coffee cup. And we appreciate you tuning in. Check us out. Like, subscribe, push all the buttons. But for now, this has been Moon and Cal in Kalbardrs Korner. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.